You know, I heard one of the BBC's North America correspondents, Caddy Kay, yesterday say on a rival channel to you that we had to accept this was going to become part of our way of life. Never! If we accept this as a way of life, that is giving in. It is appeasement. It is surrendering. We've got to stand strong and say we are going to stamp out radicalisation in our schools, in our prisons and elsewhere. We will stop people on terror lists from leaving our country and getting trained in Syria, and we're going to do something about this. And even if it takes us years to get rid of it, we're going to get rid of it. I will never, ever, ever accept this as part of our way.
How about to
discuss this? We talk about immigration. But actually, the debate today is a different one. It's about those who were born in this country who've been radicalised. And it's that, I think, the British people, and there's a mixture today of people who are very upset and people who are very angry. What we want is the British government to start tackling radicalisation in this country.
What I've seen in the UK, and I have some understanding that in America it's similar, is that much of this recruitment to extremism is going on within the organisations of the state. It's happening within schools, and especially it is happening within prisons. And one of the reasons it's being allowed to happen within the organs of our state is that we as governments, we as nations, we as countries are not being robust enough in defending our values. We've been weak and they've taken advantage of us.
Hundreds of UK citizens have left the country to fight for jihadists in Iraq and Syria, making it the second largest recruitment source of militants in Europe. That's according to a Centre for Radicalisation Studies. And recently, the British Prime Minister pledged to make greater attempts to tackle the problem. However, allegations are now surfacing that a prison right in the heart of London has turned into a safe haven for radicalisation and recruitment.
Jamal says he witnessed Islamist recruiters operating unchecked in Belmarsh.
They have celebrity status in the prison. If you're a radical imam, you're a celebrity. If you're somebody that committed a terrorist offence, you're a celebrity. That way they can actively get into their recruitment and they can actively brainwash people day in, day out.
With any religion, you get those who latch onto it and use that religion as an excuse for extremism. And we're particularly concerned by that. And there's clear evidence that there are youngsters being radicalised and forced to join the radicalisation of young, vulnerable prisoners.
I do not want those young men who were outside Cologne train station to have one of these in a few short years and to be able to come to our country. And now Mrs. Merkel has decided that Turkey must become a member of the European Union by 2025 at the latest. So if you vote to remain, ladies and gentlemen, you're voting to go into a political union with Turkey. You are voting to go into a free travel area with 77 million people and rising fast in Turkey.
You're right about this issue of supporting Turkish membership of the European Union. I think we should back it wholeheartedly. It should continue to be our policy to support Turkish membership wholeheartedly and try to persuade others to do the same.
Tabii ki Türkiye. Turkey deserves its place at the top table of European politics. And that is what I will fight for. It makes me angry that your progress towards EU membership can be frustrated in the way that it has been. My view is clear. I believe it's just wrong to say that Turkey can guard the camp but not be allowed to sit in the tent. So I will remain your strongest possible advocate for EU membership and for greater influence at the top table of European diplomacy. People ask me, why Turkey? And why so soon? Well, I can tell you why. Because Turkey is vital for our economy, vital for our security, and vital for our politics and our diplomacy. Tabii ki Türkiye.
In addition, we see, as I warned earlier, evidence that ISIS are now using this route to put their jihadists on European soil. We must be mad to take this risk with the cohesion of our society. But there is a real and genuine threat. When ISIS say they want to flood our continent with 500,000 Islamic extremists, they mean it. And there is nothing in this document that will stop those people from coming. Indeed, I fear we face a direct threat to our civilization if we allow large numbers of people from that war-torn region into Europe. It is ironic that 9 days before a British general election, Mr Cameron and Mr Miliband are not engaged in this debate, and in fact the UK can do nothing. We are impotent. We have surrendered our ability to get involved. I promise my party will stand up to this impending disaster for all concerned.
This video, obtained by B&O News, shows a gunman opening fire outside of a McDonald's restaurant in Munich, across from the OEZ shopping mall.
If we want to help genuine refugees, if we want to protect our societies, if we want to stop the criminal trafficking gangs from benefiting as they are, we must stop the boats coming as the Australians did, and then we can assess who qualifies for refugee status.
And at Russell Square, what was left of the number 30 bus.
I'm making a simple argument that actually, if people have gone away to fight for an international terrorist organisation that is fighting against our values, the very last thing we want is them back in this country. Right. I want us to take away their passports from them. I accept the European Court won't like it, but I think it's very important.
But on James Vallis, at least 6 people are believed to have been killed and others are injured after the shooting at a Munich shop.
Let's be honest about this. Mrs Merkel made one of the worst policy decisions we've seen from a European politician in the last 70 years, when she unconditionally said in the middle of 2015, as many as want to come, can come. And there was no vetting, there was no checking, and there were people like me standing up for months ahead of that, saying we should not let our compassion imperil our safety and indeed our civilization. Good morning, everybody. Well, the horrors of Nice are unspeakable. I have to say, I quite deliberately have not watched any of the online footage. I just think it would be just too terribly upsetting. 10 children dead, and it's pretty clear this is the 7th attack in France over the course of the last 18 months. When ISIS say they will use the migrant tide to flood Europe with 500,000 of their own jihadists, I think we better listen. Now, I suspect that it's a shock, it will be a hell of a shock, to many European citizens, including the British, to understand that we've already agreed a common European asylum system. And what today is about, and today's resolution, is the direct implementation of it. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is this. The definitions for who qualifies for asylum are so wide, they include not just people coming from war, not just people coming from failed states. Mr Juncker this morning seemed to suggest that perhaps it would even include people who were fleeing poverty. All that slightly worried me was that Ed thought that perhaps we should be using the EU for defence. Now, it's absolutely clear Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, has said they are building a European army.
In reference to Ukraine, Juncker added that with its own army, Europe could react more credibly to the threat to peace in a member state or in a neighbouring state. The European Union should have its own army to convey a clear message to Russia, says Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker.
Now it's the European Union that wants an air force, an army. 7 countries push ahead and form a European army that you as Prime Minister will keep us out of it.
Yeah, there's not going to be. The EU's foreign policy chief is pushing ahead with closer security cooperation within the bloc amid plans for a single European army.
We need a common headquarters and a coalition of EU countries acting in accordance with the permanent structural cooperation of the EU treaty. From such a group, an EU army could eventually arise.
We should list the issue of security as a priority, and we should start setting up a common European army.
One concrete step is Eurocorps, with 5 EU members and based in Strasbourg, but it's not the only one. Missions under the CSDP are widespread. EU4 is the umbrella label for the European Union force. So far, some 15 civilian and military peacekeeping missions with soldiers from various member states have been completed.
What free movement means, it means free healthcare, it means free education, it means free access to the benefit system, it means an open door to the criminal gangs and the modern-day Fagins, who will of course benefit from the fact that London is the most successful and wealthy international city in Europe. This country has always been welcome to people that have come here from across the world, from different cultures, different religions, people who've claimed refugee status, and we did it, you know, since World War II, 30 to 50,000 people a year used to come into this country. The figure is now 500,000 a year, and we see our hospitals, we see primary schools where there are many kids here who can't get into primary schools, being bussed off 20 miles away. We see a benefit system designed primarily for people and families who paid in for generations, now being opened up to people who've been here literally for a few weeks. And on top of all of this, we're about to open the door on January the 1st to the whole of Bulgaria and Romania. It is not right and it is not fair, and it's about time we started to put our own people first.
There are demands all over Wandsworth. Nearly half the inmates are foreign, and many can't speak English.
Are you from Romania? Romania?
So many Romanians.
When Theresa May says that it is difficult to control immigration as a member of the European Union, she's wrong. It isn't difficult, it's impossible. We saw outside that train station in Cologne on New Year's Eve, well, we saw the mass open sexual molestation of hundreds of women appearing in public. And frankly, if we're prepared to accept, or if Germany and Sweden are prepared to accept unlimited numbers of young males from countries and cultures where women are at best second-class citizens, then frankly, what do you expect?
Hundreds of people gathered in Cologne Tuesday night to protest against the attacks.
The perpetrators must be caught and brought to justice. Measures must be taken, and we should show solidarity among each other.
Police say more than 1,000 men, many of them reportedly of Northern African and Middle Eastern descent, had gathered in front of the cathedral on New Year's Eve. In Hamburg, dozens of women were attacked in the city's red light district, also on New Year's Eve. Police are trying to determine whether the attacks were coordinated. Lawmakers have called for any asylum seekers found among the attackers to be deported.
It is, I think, in many ways one of the most disgraceful public order events that we've seen in modern day Europe, and yet there was an attempt by the police and the press to cover it all up.
Migrant assaults on women have shocked Europe, but it may not be as new as many people think. Sweden is dealing with a looming scandal, with police accused of covering up mass sexual harassment. Leaked reports suggest Swedish police investigated the sexual harassment of girls during a Stockholm music festival 2 years in a row, and most of the suspects were allegedly migrant.
Well, can I just correct you? When you said that 16 countries had voted for the Eurozone bailout, what you meant was 16 parliaments stuffed with career politicians had voted for it, not 16 countries. Because I tell you something, if you put this bailout package to a referendum across Europe, the vast majority of countries would say no. So Slovakia said no last night, but of course no isn't good enough. No is unacceptable in the modern European Union. If you say no, as the Irish did a couple of years ago, and as the Slovaks did last night, you're made to vote again until you get the right answer, which gives you a true measure of what this project's really like. What is the point, actually, of bailing these countries out? What are the bailouts? Are these bailouts helping the people in Greece and Portugal and Ireland? No, they're not. What they're actually doing is they're giving money to these countries to give back to our banks who overlent the money in the first place. I mean, the whole thing is mad. What these countries need, who are trapped inside this economic prison called the euro, is they need to devalue. Without devaluation, they're having austerity packages pushed upon them, which is forcing them into a downward deflationary spiral, which, in my opinion, in Greece and possibly in Portugal too, could lead to revolution. What we're doing is stupid and very, very dangerous indeed. Look, they are, you must understand, that I've just been in this parliamentary chamber with Mr. Barroso. These people are absolutely intent on creating a United States of Europe. They don't care how many millions of people are chucked onto the unemployment scrap heap. They don't care about the tide of human misery that they cause. They have got their political goal. But the reality is that not only economically is this failing, but politically it's failing. You know, we can talk about the Slovakian parliament, but more significantly, look at what happened in Finland earlier this year, where a virtually brand new political party got 20% of the vote. Look at the opinion polls in the Netherlands. There is now a split in Europe from north to south, and in the north we are witnessing a democratic revolution against the whole concept of the euro and the idea that people like Mr. Barroso and my old friend Herman Van Rompuy should govern 500 million people. It is not acceptable.